Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast. Now in our 5th season, looking into the exciting happenings of Ipswich Town Football Club. I am Richard Woodward and you are tuned into the flagship show, available every week on video and audio for a sometimes irreverent but always informative hour, or we may not drag it out, or less, of football conversation this week. Make your Monday a Blue Monday. Joining me tonight, being sniped from the roof above Debenhams, Craig Fimbo. We'll explain that to people who are listening to the pod. Craig, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. That'll make perfect sense to people who are listening, that won't it? Yeah.
Joe Fairs. Joe, how are you?
Yeah, loving life.
Loving life. Resplendent in your England. Is that an England one-day kit that you got there, or
Yeah,
2020 kit?
The 2019 World Cup kit.
Been bargain hunting, is it?
Yeah, had time between a meeting in Clacton and Stansted and went to the glorious Clacton Common and picked it up in a JD outlet. Most stuff in there is shirts, which are things like Brother 84, Nan 50, and stuff like that on the back of Celtic shirts that they're trying to sell, like random personalised shirts, but this was in there, so it was a touch.
We won't ask you what the name is on the back of that one. Craig, let's
Randy 69.
Yeah, here we go. I was going to say something from the In-Betweeners film, but I'm going to keep it family friendly. Craig, you have you have an LED light shining from your headset, don't you? Which is what I was referring to at the start.
Yeah. Bluetooth issues. I blame the Nordic god for Bluetooth.
I blame our high expectations of your headsets. It's definitely our fault.
Hashtag expectations.
But we can hear you loud and clear. Not a huge amount of news to cover. We had a midweek show. You guys were both at Fleetwood, weren't you?
Yes.
I decided against spending £10 to watch that. I knew what was coming. But plenty to talk about Coventry City-wise. I've as expected, probably. For people who are watching on YouTube, probably surprised that I'm not wearing a Coventry City shirt, given the abuse that I get from the pod team on here, but no Coventry shirt though. The two-tone kit, I do have made a purchase of the two-tone kit. I have to come clean before someone else outs me.
That will really help the Rich is a Coventry's fan band.
Well, do you know what? I'm happy to glory hunt Coventry City at the moment, frankly. But we'll talk more about that later on in Coventry in the match on Saturday. Let's start with some news. I guess we're looking for silver linings and light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to our injury situation. Again, more on injuries in a minute as well. But Danny Rowe, back in training. Joe, Kane Vincent-Young, we also hear, is getting closer to first-team action. You spotted Kane Vincent-Young's rehab in action, didn't you, this week?
Well, I was at the gym on, I think it was Monday, and he came into the changing rooms when I was there. But he'd been swimming, so maybe that is low.
Where do we start with this one, Craig?
But he may have been in the steam room coming down from a big session. So I can't neither confirm nor deny what activity he'd been doing, other than he'd been wet.
I can just envisage Joe doing that soaring motion between his legs with his towel as Kane Vincent-Young strolls into the change room.
There's an image for everyone. But Danny Rowe's kind of form kind of tailed away a little bit before his injury. We've already talked about how important Vincent-Young appears to be, having only been at the club for a few months. Your thoughts, Joe, on where Rowe would fit in at the moment? Is there, when suspensions are sorted out, is he getting in the team even if he gets fit, Joe?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know what the best team is. Lambert doesn't know what the best team is. If we're setting up how we did yesterday, the sort of 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, then one of those wide roles he's probably quite proficient in. He'd give us another option, put it that way.
He's one of these players that are out of contract as well, I think, in the summer, isn't he? Or possibly with the 1 year option. Craig, are you renewing a contract for Danny Rowe in the summer?
Probably not. Has he done enough when he has played? He scored, didn't he, at Rochdale? But I don't think he's really set the world alight when he has played. He does give us he would give us a wider option on the bench, I presume. I say, but because we've got a lot of samey central midfielders clogging it up at the moment, so it would be an option. It would save you playing people out of position, I suppose. But no, I don't think he's really pushed on as much as we'd hope.
Is it? Would it be harsh for Gwion Edwards? Again, we'll talk about this maybe in the context of the Coventry game. But Gwion Edwards had a good performance yesterday at right back. Started to figure that position out. Would it be a bit harsh if he's bombed out of the team, or is Vincent Young that important or that good that there's no real choice other than to do it? Either of you can answer that. Craig looks like he's
I think Vincent Young's. He has shown in these brief appearances that he's a right back, isn't he? So. Right back or right wing back. At least he's played the position. As you say, Edwards did well yesterday. He was certainly second half. He was getting forward, wasn't he? He was pushing their wing back. I heard Mick Mills on the radio afterwards on the way home saying that he wasn't actually that convinced by him first half. I thought he was perfectly okay first half. The way that Coventry play would, by definition, push our fullbacks back. They would push right up, weren't they, in the first half? But no, I think Edwards is just a utility option, isn't he? He can play a couple of different positions. He can play up. Now it transpires he can do a job up that right side. He can play off the left as well. So yeah, I would replace him with Vincent Young once he's up to speed, but certainly have him in and around the squad.
Well, maybe Vincent Young can come in at left back. More on that later on. I tweeted this article out on Saturday, a long Athletic article. Athletic is this online subscription service that some people have subscriptions to, so apologies for a lot of people saying, how do I read this, and blah blah blah, and I'm not paying for it. So don't worry, I'm going to read you all of the important bits now.
Just quickly on that, I think I think someone said if you download the mobile app, you get 4 free articles a month on it. So if someone does want to read it and isn't a subscriber, download the mobile app and you could get a couple of articles a month, so you would be able to pick it up.
There's plenty going on in that article, and there's some good content there. It's obviously going to be skewed towards Premier League and Championship. Well, there you go. More consumer advice from Joe Fairs, who's like the Martin Lewis of the Blue Monday podcast. It's great. But the few bits and pieces that I picked out of the article, guys, for your comments and views on. Joe, let's start with this. Let's start with Lambert's contract. There's not a huge amount about Lambert in this. I don't know. There's quite a sympathetic view on Lambert, and I'll let you draw your own conclusions from that. But apparently, the Athletic sources, and of which there are quite a lot of insiders, including our own Benjamin Bloom, who is quoted in this article, says that his contract does not contain any clauses that allow us to sever his contract without compensation being paid. So the question is, at what point can we trigger a termination without the need to pay too much compensation? So we can't go away for nothing. But also, just finishing that point quickly, Joe, before I get your thoughts on this, sacking Lambert. Evans' greatest success, according to one insider, is that he's managed to stay out of the spotlight, and sacking Lambert is something he won't be afraid to do. Your thoughts on that contract situation, which we've always long said was a dumb idea at the time, but also the fact that Evans' greatest success is keeping out the spotlight, and whether Lambert, like McCarthy, like Hurst, might be the next one to face the P45.
Well, if you sort of look on the TWT message board, Phil Ham posts on there every now and again and mentions Lambert's contract, and Stu and Andy in the EADT seem to be on a similar line, that whilst there is no break clause without compensation, it seems that those three between them seem to have agreed on the fact that if he's sacked at any point, it's almost a 2-year compensation payout. But if he's sacked for missing out on the top 6, it's a smaller payout. So I don't think anyone thought that there was a no compensation route out of this. But it's just a case that if we're in a position where we aren't realistically going to make the top 6 and the 2-year payout, Evans and Lambert need to, if it's going to happen early, need to come to agreement sort of somewhere between that point as to where it is. Lambert will obviously want it more one way, Evans the other, but will either of them want to sit it out until the end of the season just to... Like I say, Evans has to do what I guess his solicitors and his advisors say, and if the difference is hundreds of thousands of pounds, I don't know what Lambert earns, but it could easily be a £250,000 difference, then maybe you do need to sit it out until you can get away with the lower payment, because that money's a lot of money for our transfer budget. Effectively, that's another potentially 2 players at this level, 1 to 2 players at this level for a season. So
you've got the kind of the pivot of that point, which I totally agree. We talked about that before, I think, and season ticket sales, which I think you guys talked about on the pod midweek about, if you're an Ipswich fan who's looking for Lambert to be sacked, our sense is that it's not going to happen anytime soon. If you're on the fence about whether you renew, the fact Lambert's going to stick around until it's mathematically certain, that's another month or so, I guess, possibly, depending on whether results pick up for us. You're not going to be happy, and why would you want to renew? But should we be hinting to people that there's a good chance he goes unless a miracle happens?
We always seem to find ourselves in this position, don't we? And it's always around season ticket time that there's a, is the manager staying? Is he going? What, are they going to delay the season tickets? What will affect the early bird deadlines and bits and pieces like that? There's someone else also put on Twitter, I don't know who it was, apologies, but there's something to do with the financial year, isn't there? The deadline, April the 6th as well, which may be an increased national insurance payout to if you're made redundant or something along those lines. So I think it's actually, of a payment over 35 grand, I think it said, you'd have to pay their national
13%
contributions, something along those lines. So, I think all things are pointing to, if it does happen, an early-ish April agreement.
Like McCarthy.
I don't know the accountant side of it, but you might be able to put them on gardening leave until after that point and then pay it off at that point to get around that contribution side of it. But I'm sure someone knows more on that. But Evans, you're saying he's not afraid to sack him. Like any owner, as soon as, especially one who's so low profile as Evans has been, as soon as the owner starts getting a load of stick, they do tend to sack the manager, because it means that if things aren't going well on the pitch, the owner gets it all of a sudden, that shield goes up and there's something else to think about. It's almost like a dead cat bounce or a shiny toy for someone else to look at. So I won't be at all surprised. I know that, like the piece in the Angling today, that Stu Watson said that Evans wasn't at the game yesterday. I know for a fact he was due to be at the game up until Thursday or Friday, and he was coming down with friends, and so they've obviously pulled out because he didn't want to sit there and get a load of stick. I genuinely think is a reason.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, some other bits and pieces, and more on Evans as we go. Wage bill. Maybe this suggested that whilst one of the largest, it's not the largest. In fact, Fleetwood have a larger wage bill than Town. There are some senior pros or players in the first team on £1,500 a week. I guess that unless you're seeing the balance sheet and the profit and loss, you don't really know whether that's true or not. But our clout in the wage market was supposed to be a big thing, and maybe this article suggests we're not as maybe our wage bill isn't as big as we thought. Lots of
I think what it is that there was clout in the thing, but in our budget, which allowed us to sign Alan Judge, which allowed us to sign James Norwood, Thomas Holy, Luke Garbutt, but there isn't another 20 grand a week that Evans is going to put in January to up the budget. The budget is the budget for the season, but
used it up.
There was. I think if the right player was available, there was money there, but we couldn't get deals done for the right players. But
Craig, we shudder to kick off debates about McCarthy. Some interesting stuff on him, though. Some quotes here from. I would guess staff that worked for him or at the club at the time who were sympathetic, but there was a view that McCarthy was knifed in the back by a group of staff from the club's academy who thought he was out of touch. Academy coaches would undermine McCarthy in front of young players because of his long ball style, telling them that this wasn't the Ipswich way, and his time in charge would not last forever, presumably with the view to do not get fixated with how the manager plays, listen to us instead. Some chat about his resistance to use sports science as it potentially presented a data-led limitation, that's my words, for players' physical capabilities when McCarthy believed he could better assess them by them going 100% hell for leather in training. Nothing, I guess, particularly surprising, albeit probably this fracture between staff in the academy and the first team certainly not helpful, and possibly led to this siege mentality, and maybe McCarthy feeling he was being attacked from all sides near the end, perhaps.
Yeah, very possibly. But I knew of someone who used to work at the club. They don't anymore. But you always got the feeling from little snippets I heard that there was a if not a complete separation of the ways between academy and first team. There was just a feeling that that the academy, all the age groups are playing in a certain way, are taught and drilled to play in a certain way, but the first team were chalk and cheese to what these guys were, attempting week in, week out themselves with the youths. But It's quite interesting to see it come out in black and white, if you like. I've read it through a couple of times, and I'm trying to work out who this mole is, but I've got some ideas, but I'm certainly not going to say them here. But there was that, and they say about these like the academy contacts, and a bit like, you may well go onto it, so apologies if you do. But O'Neill comes in for a little bit of stick, doesn't he, towards the end?
Yeah,
no. So, no, go ahead. Read the piece and then we can talk.
Okay, so the bit on O'Neill is the transition from Milne. There's a bit about Milne, which isn't particularly flattering either. But the Hurst coming in took a fortnight for Hurst to get in touch with any of the staff and get their opinions on the players that were at the club. And then there's Evans and O'Neill had advice that relegation would inevitably follow if a drastic shift in approach was to happen in one go, and the move to sports science and signing of lower leaguers therefore wasn't particularly of a surprise when relegation came calling a few months later. One of the solutions in the summer, in reference to the adoption of sports science approaches, was less training, and this meant that players weren't fit going into matches and actually got injured more because they weren't up to match pace. Too much faith was placed in academy methods working at senior level. This is all under presumably O'Neill's guidance and recommendation, and a limited experience, it says, a result of first team results driven business. That was a view from insiders provided there. Is that what you had was that what you were referring to, Craig?
Yeah,
quite scathing again, I've paraphrased a bit of it. But
that last comment in particular, I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the quote was something like, "There's junior staff now in charge of the club, and they don't have any experience of first team business, basically." So,
but too much faith. And Joe, you're someone who's quite close to the academy, obviously.
To me, that seems a bit revisionary to me when I see it, because you talk about the academy leading this. The reality is, Paul Hurst, Chris Doy came in from Shrewsbury. They brought in their own fitness coach, Nathan Winder, who is now at Sheffield United. So he's obviously no mug, because they're one of the fittest teams going, and
no
they managed to keep David McGoldrick fit. And I did read an article on The Athletic recently that sort of like 9 of their players had played in sort of all but 2 or 3 of their games. They are a team that keeps their players fit. He brought in that other guy, I can't remember his name. Skit, was it Chris Skit as well?
Yeah.
He was their physio at Shrewsbury. The pre-season was going to Spain, doing triple sessions out there, which is exactly what Hurst had done. So I don't really understand how this was academy led when it was clearly the first team manager leading this, and the recruitment was Hurst leading the recruitment, because at the end of the day, you signed John Nolan, Toto Enciala, Janoy Danasian, Tayo Eden, who were players that he'd previously targeted, without that being management led. So, whilst
but did they bring him in, thinking that's the way they wanted to go, and he fit the profile of the manager that they were looking to bring in?
Yeah, quite possibly, quite probably even. But he was a manager with a track record, and he came in and tried to do effectively what he'd done elsewhere, and failed badly at it. And I don't really see. I think there may have been issues between him and the academy staff. I know, sort of over like Andre Dazelle, he effectively dropped him back into the under-23s, which was a very unpopular club move, and he wanted him to go out on loan, and that was stopped from above his head. So there was obviously tensions in place, but I don't see that it was I just don't see that this was Lee O'Neill driving this. This was Paul Hurst driving this, and Paul Hurst given carte blanche to drive it. Effectively, is how it looks like from everything I've heard and from what I can see, even almost.
Just to finish on the article, and as I say, if you've been now given a neat little way of reading it anyway, but something about the club's institutional memory has got lost thanks to Marcus Evans' sweeping changes of personnel off and on the field, as it were, but the lack of day-to-day leadership. A quote, "Getting things done can't be easy when the person you need to sanction something is rarely around." And to be honest, guys, I guess, Joe, you've read it as well. There is no angle to this that is positive, is there? Apart from the quick fixes, perhaps to sack the manager. But otherwise, Evans' style of leadership and management and running the club is not going to change quickly. All it's done is shed light on it a little bit in the public domain, but also flag perhaps the limitations that we already knew.
Yeah, it doesn't tell a huge amount that sort of people close to the club weren't aware of. I know the frustration with decisions being made is that it goes at an absolute snail's pace because Marcus is the only person who can sign things off, and he's not there. And when Ian Milne left, Lee O'Neill was promoted, but he's still the academy manager. So he's still got a huge job in its own right, as well as now I think he's effectively like leading the recruitment. But he's also having to sort out the season ticket prices and put packages together to get Evans to sign these. He is the chief exec of the club effectively, and Evans said, I will be at the club a lot more. What's a lot more? 1 day a month? Because they're the sort of levels you're talking about, and he needs to empower a chief exec to run the club for him, or he needs to run it himself. It is it's a full-time job to run a football club.
Yep.
But he hasn't done it, has he? Since he's been there, he's never done it. As you say, Joe, nobody, again, harken back to the guy I used to know, nobody has got any authority to make any decisions. And that's not just on the football side, that's through the hospitality side and the ground and everything else. Everything has to be signed off by Marcus Evans.
Even, like I say, because I have a hospitality season ticket, and when the season ticket prices are coming out, and there's a 10% drop for season ticket prices, it is getting to about July before I even know what my season ticket price is, and I'm speaking to my contact, and she's saying, well, what if I don't want to do the hospitality? I need to make sure that I can get the cheaper ticket in the North Stand at an early bird price or elsewhere, and they're having to write me a letter to confirm that I am able to. They will honour that price to me if I'm not happy with the hospitality price, effectively, because it's taking all summer to agree on a season ticket price, and all they did at the end of the summer was drop the price 10%, exactly the same as the rest of the ground. But that took them all summer to agree to that because it has to be agreed by Evans.
Well, I'm trying to find positives. Last week, having seen us chuck away, a point and maybe get 3 at Blackpool, the pod was about trying to find positives. That article, as I say, is just a catalogue of mismanagement. No surprises, really. Maybe some stuff there that could be disputed, and you're getting a single independent view that perhaps can't be corroborated, but nevertheless, some insightful stuff there.
But one thing on it, though, that Ben, I'm sure he wouldn't mind us saying this, but Ben obviously is quoted in the article, but he said he spoke to the journalist who was putting the piece together for a good 45 minutes.
Yeah,
he said the guy seemed really switched on, had a lot of info, a lot of stuff he wasn't even aware of, and so it isn't a hatchet job put out there, but it does seem that the managers, both McCarthy, Paul Lambert, Paul Hurst, they all got off very lightly in it. I think especially Lambert in it, because there was no real comment on the fact how poorly we are doing, and like I say, when you say what is a positive of it, well, look at yesterday's opponents, Coventry. Look at their ownership situation.
Oh yeah, Joe.
And they've got 2,000 fans or 1,800 fans loving life, having a great day out. Yeah. Now you're going to believe us. We're going to win the league, and they are going to win the league, and they are going to get promoted. And they're an absolute shit show off the pitch. Well, much, much, much worse than we ever have been.
Perfect segue for me, Joe, because I've got some stuff for you. I wanted to provide context here because this is something that I've seen close up over the last 10, how many years have I been up here? Over a decade of living up here and following Coventry in passing, not particularly closely, maybe go to a game or two a season, but now they're at the same level. I don't go and watch them. But Mark Robbins, let me start with Mark Robbins. He left Coventry February 2013 to go to Huddersfield, who I assume possibly were League One at that time, or maybe just had got back to the Championship. He was there for 19 months and only had a win percentage of 33.8%, was sacked 2 months later.
That's like the end.
Wow.
If we could have 33%, we'd be loving life.
True. In isolation, Joe, please, let me keep it in isolation because we can't compare to us. We're total timpot. Joined Scunthorpe 2 months later, I think in League One. Lasted 15 months there, win percentage of 32.4%. Joined Coventry March 2017 and has been there ever since and has slowly built up, but it did not go well to him to start with. It was a slow burn and suddenly everything is clicked into place. Join him in League Two, obviously. So let's not pretend that Mark Robbins is a Chris Wilder who had success at Oxford before he went into Sheffield United. Mark Robbins had success with Coventry, and then decided to get a bigger job, couldn't sustain it, and so wasn't exactly on everyone's shopping list when it came to managers, and had been bombed out by 2 clubs. Sisu, he mentioned Sisu, Joe. Legal disputes since 2017 now see them playing out of Coventry and Birmingham at St Andrews. They have a 2-year option, I think, to continue playing there. They've played at Northampton, and they are still continuing to appeal at the EU Commission due to the sale of the ground to Wasps and the rules around EU state aid. And in terms of net spends, Coventry have taken in nearly 6 million in transfer fees of players sold this season. They've spent 730k on one player, more on him in a bit. Otherwise, it's free transfers and loans. Season before, they spent 500k and received 1.2 million. 2 seasons before that, they spent nothing, having sold James Maddison to Norwich in the 15-16 season. This is a team of loans and youth players and freebies. League finishes, they've been relegated from the Premier League since the 2000-2001 season, 11 years in a row in the Championship, 5 seasons in League One, then a season in League Two, up via the playoffs, and 2 seasons League One. They are now looking to get back to the Championship. So this is the team that we're facing. This is the team that have got freebies, loans, academy players, and a manager who is struggling a little bit to find his home and trying to find form in the EFL. And now they are top of the league and bossing it. We'll talk about Ipswich's stats because they don't make good reading anyway. But Coventry's form going into this match. So all of that off the field context. Coventry. This is our 4th game against them this season. They are coming into the game top of the league, 2 points clear of second with a game in hand. 17 wins, 13 draws, 3 defeats. No defeats in 2020. They've played 6 games in the FA Cup, by the way. The defeats they've had were to Rotherham and Tranmere in October and Shrewsbury in December. Since then, they've gone 17 games unbeaten. All sounds good, doesn't it? Ipswich going into this game, 6 changes, 2 defeats in a row. Will Keane absent through injury, so another one on the injury list. And Coventry are unchanged, but they have their 2-10 away kit, as I mentioned. So let's go through the lineups after all of that. And as I will go, I'll ask you about the Ipswich team, guys, first. I'll tell you about the Coventry team and how much those players cost. So Ipswich, Norris comes in for Holy. Who expected that apart from me? I kind of had an inkling it might happen.
I didn't. I wouldn't say I wasn't shocked by it because he seems to prefer Norris to Holy.
Any conspiracy theories about the Wolves loan as well? We'll see what happens next week in Bristol. But back 4, Garbett, Chambers, Wolfenden comes back in. Edwards also comes in at right back. Scouse, Dazelle, Nolan. Scouse comes back in. Our midfield 3. Judge, Sears and Bishop up front, or in a 4-3-3. Your thoughts on this? We kind of, Stuart Watson was pretty early on the doors. This was a 4-3-3. With the personnel available, guys, any changes that you could have foreseen there, or Dobra, Simpson? I guess there were calls for, but otherwise it kind of picks itself, doesn't it, Craig?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the midfield 3, you can pretty much perm any available. Flynn Downs apart, you can exchange any of our central midfielders for any of the others, really, and you'll get a similar sort of performance. I think there's not much between any of them. Simpson looks way off to my eyes at the moment. He's 5th choice centre forward, isn't he? So I think people clamouring for him to be starting matches is a bit too soon. But yeah, it's Bishop playing wide right isn't one of my favourite places to see him. I'm sure it's not his favourite place to play.
What about Judge on the other side?
Yeah, quite well, was he?
Yeah.
Nominally.
Yeah.
He was further left than Bishop at some points, even though they're both on the same wing. So, we know the limitations there. But if we're going to play that formation and we don't have the players to play it, we're squeezing square pegs into round holes again, aren't we?
Joe, you were after a run of games for Andre Dazelle, so 2 starts for him within a week. Happy about that?
Yeah, I think we've got to give him a run of games between now and the end of the season.
Yep.
Simple.
Craig, your sniper, by the way, is a little happier now. He's gone green with his light, just so you're aware. So you're obviously at full charge. On the bench, I guess something to mention, along with Dobra and Simpson, we mentioned already. Ben Morris makes his first appearance on the bench following his recovery from injury. Joe, there was a loan mooted for him, presumably, given our lack of strikers. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I think he was due to go to Aldershot, but that was purely for some fitness because I think they see his level as a bit higher than that, but they weren't able to sort anything before the end of the January window. But Ben Falami's at Stevenage, not playing there, where he'd probably be ahead of Tyrese Simpson, or he would be ahead of Tyrese Simpson, and Jordan Roberts is at Gillingham, playing there.
Just about to overtake us in the league.
Yeah, 1 point in it, isn't there? So let me talk you through Coventry's system. It's a 3-4-2-1 formation, and as I go, I'll tell you how much these players cost. In goal, Marco Morosi, free agent. Dom Heim, free agent. Carl McFadzean, free agent. Michael Rose, free agent. That's the back three and the keeper. Your midfield force. Well, it's kind of wing backs with McCallum on one side, who is sold to Norwich for £3 million loaned back. But signed from Jamie Vardy's academy, his F9 academy, whatever it is. He on one side, and Fang Caddy Dabo on the other side, who's come through the Chelsea academy but signed for nothing. Liam Walsh is a loan from Bristol City, I think it is. And Liam Kelly was signed for free or an undisclosed low fee, is the captain. Your midfield two, just behind the striker, Callum O'Hare on loan from Villa. And Jamie Allen, who was signed undisclosed, but I think it wasn't particularly much. And Matt Godden, who is the form player for Cov at the moment, 15 goals I think he's on, signed for $750k in the summer. So he was the big outlay, the big purchase in the summer. On the bench, no one with any fees spent, no free agent keeper, free agent defender, free agent academy players. So that is the. I don't want to labour the point. I know I went off on one a little bit there, but that is what we're up against. And you look at our squads again. There's not too many high fees in there, but you've got players on big wages. We spent big money on Nolan, certainly. Garbutt's probably on a decent loan wedge as well. So it just shows you that in this division, which is not particularly great, and I didn't think Coventry were particularly great, nor did they need to be, but it's not impossible to get a good team playing well without having to spend any money, and that must be music to Marcus Evans' ears, eh? Let's move into the action, guys. There's not a huge amount to talk about. As I go, I'll kind of intersperse with what was happening in the terraces as well. 12-minute, Joe, you're probably best placed, or Craig, you're kind of looking along the 18-yard line, aren't you?
I look along the goal line, actually, right along the goal line.
Was this a penalty in the 12th minute for Nolan, or did he just go down a little bit too easy? What's the VAR verdict?
I thought it was a dive. I thought he was going down. There may have been some contact, but he was on his way down.
Yeah.
Craig's haven't. Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, agree.
We have consensus there. 14 minutes, Coventry starts to come into the game. Quite a few crosses, flashing across the area, a few blocks. It all seems a little bit easy to get past us and behind us, and the North Stand start to boo as Coventry were in a corner, and that acts as a warning shot, because 2 minutes after that little flurry, Ipswich will go behind. John Nolan, who we'll talk about again in this match, decides to take a run down the left-hand side and quickly finds Darbo, who is going to put him under pressure. Who wants to take it from here? Who's seen the goal back? Or who can recall it? Because it was right in front of me. I'm happy to talk you through it if you want, but also happy to share the love if anyone wants to talk it through.
Go for it, Rich.
So it's a great run by Liam Walsh. Breaks quickly, no mucking about. The question is whether Nolan is just unlucky or whether it's just a bit dumb. But it's all about Godden. You can tell he's a quality player. You can tell he's a player we've spent money on. Controls the ball and turns in one movement and slots it into the corner. A nice goal celebration. Elbows out because you obviously can't shake hands anymore. And Ipswich are 1-0 down. And I was expecting boos. There were a few scatter boos in the North Lower, but otherwise, guys, the general mood is of apathy and probably expecting it. Yeah. But a good goal, Craig.
It was a lovely goal, actually. Yeah. How many times we said it though? How many times we said that other teams are so incisive when they've got the ball, when they've suddenly got the ball, they're on the break, as you say, got passed inside, midfielder drives through with the ball, nice little late through ball. What you find is that Chambers isn't in the right position. Garbutt's chasing his man back as well at left back. They've got 2 or 3 options, not just the one that they take. But when he takes a little twist on the ball and first time to the corner, it's a great finish.
Yeah, and the start that Ipswich didn't want, tough start. It happens, and I was expecting a little bit more anger in the stands, but it doesn't really materialise. The Ipswich fans were generally supportive. but Coventry fans start the chant of "sacked in the morning," which I think is picked up by a few. But this is the big chance, guys, and this is where the crowd does turn. And we've mentioned him already. I'm going to have to mention him again. It's a long punt over the top by Judge, and John Nolan has broken the Coventry offside trap, or possibly is offside.
He looks offside. I watched it back this morning, and it's just off the screen. But unless he's able to teleport like 3 yards,
I'm trying to find positive, guys. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I thought it was a well-timed run, but I'm the opposite end of the ground. But we think he's offside, yeah.
Yeah, about 2 yards, I think.
Is this any excuse though for the finish that follows here? Because he has all the time in the world. It's a situation where Caden Jackson has found himself a couple of times this season and scored goals. Tranmere and Accrington, I think it was, spring to mind. Craig, what are you doing here of all the myriad of options laid out in front of you as the ball drops? Are you lamely heading it back to the goalkeeper?
It doesn't drop once; it drops twice, doesn't it? I appreciate it's coming over his shoulder the first time, but an informed, confident player may well have just brought it down the first time it's landing on the fall. As it is, it bounces, and then he sort of looks at the goalie, and you can see the goalie's there, and you can see what he's trying to do. But even though the goalie takes 2 or 3 steps backwards, there's no way in the world it's going to go over the top of him had he stayed where it was. But he had so much time on the ball; he could have taken it down the second time round, and then missed.
And then passed it to Judge. It was that. Well, like I say, it was. You could see what he was trying to do. That the keeper was sort of in a bit no man's land. That if you could just get a load of power on that header, you're just going to float it over him. But
he volleys that, does he not? Does he bring it down and smash it on the volley?
As you say, touch.
Yeah, as you say, Rich, it's pretty much carbon copy of the 2 chances that Jackson's had, and yet we know that Jackson's not the most instinctive of finishers, but he put those away, both those goals, beautifully. And there's no reason why this goal-scoring midfielder we purchased a couple of summers ago shouldn't be doing the same. But he just looks so low on confidence, doesn't he? His body language.
He does.
Dave mentioned it a few times, didn't he, on the WhatsApp? His body language just looks shot.
On paper, he costs more than the entire Coventry team. To put that in context, but he doesn't hide, guys. You know, he gets involved with a move on 41 minutes to set up Freddie Sears, and he hits a low shot, which isn't really firm enough to trouble the keeper. 44, he's also in again. Coventry caught up the pitch quite a lot, but we can't take advantage. Joe, did this hit you, Joe? This is not too far away from you, is it? He cuts in the left and volleys high and wide, and is it just under the south stand lower tier, top tier?
I can confirm it didn't hit me.
Okay, good.
But in the first half, Nolan effectively was playing as a number 10 and actually getting ahead of the striker and getting past him. So I'm not going to criticise. I know the miss was poor, but I'm not going to criticise him because he was actually trying to get into the box, which is something that our midfielders haven't done. So,
yep. And that's half time. Coventry have had perhaps a few sights, but not many clear-cut chances. But taken the one they have had, Ipswich have probably had 2 sights, maybe 1. But a similar story, and it's all too much for Norris, who gets carded walking down the tunnel. Did you see what happened here, Craig? This was too far away from me. I saw him kick a bottle away, I think.
Yeah, no, I think he threw his water bottle
Toys
away
out the pram a little bit,
once he'd spouted off to referee Kettle.
Trevor Kettle, yeah. So, but that's half time, and there's not a huge amount to talk about in the second half. It was quite a comfortable second half for Coventry, but they nearly double their lead. This is a lovely move. I'm trying to recall how the ball gets to Darbo out on the right hand side, but he doesn't muck about. His cross is firmly struck, quick and early, and Godden is there. And really, guys should do better here, or is it good defending? It's on the run, I guess. Maybe
there's no defending.
Is there not? I thought
Chambers doesn't cut out
Chambers.
the cross.
Okay, fine.
No, it goes. It sort of bounces over his foot, and he should have cut it out really. And then Godden just puts it over. He should have scored.
He was leaning back a little,
that was a beautiful cross though. So I looked right along that goal line there, and you could just see it just curves away, past Chambers, and Godden just running in perfectly on it. And yeah, he should have just slammed it home, shouldn't he?
It's like a Trent Alexander-Arnold cross.
It was. Oh, it was lovely, wasn't it? But again, you mentioned it before, Craig. Incisive build-ups, no mucking about, no sideways pass, and no going backwards. Decisiveness. 55. Edwards is defending here. We've mentioned Edwards before the match action. He's puts in quite a lot of good defensive work here. A lovely cross from O'Hare, I think also from your side, Craig. Godden ready to head that one at the far post, but Edwards gets in there. A couple of sides for Godden in a few minutes. It's Chambers and Garbutt who have to defend here, and Garbutt ends up clearing the ball but pulling up with another injury. And Earl has to come on to replace him a few minutes later. Garbutt, not another.
It was groin.
Was it a groin? I'm trying to. Yeah, it didn't look particularly good for him, similar to the one we had before. But it wasn't a great performance, was it? And it didn't have a good one against Blackpool. Set pieces again. He passed it out of play in the first half, which drew jeers from some of the North Stand as well. What's your take on Garbutt? Because certainly as our form drop, he doesn't look particularly confident or happy either, does he?
No. Since he's come back from that injury, isn't it? Especially that thigh injury he had, didn't he, a few weeks ago? Whether they've rushed him back again to get him in the team, I don't know. But whether yesterday's injuries are a knock-on effect from that, who knows? I think it was the same leg or the same area, wasn't it? It was his left thigh and his left groin. Can you have a left groin? I don't know. But yeah, even his set pieces, our entire game plan is pretty much revolving around getting a set piece somewhere near the area or a corner or a free kick that certainly was earlier in the season, that he can sling in the box. So if they're failing, then we're failing. You were saying about their incisiveness, just to go back to what you talked about there, Rich. The amount of times, I don't know if it was especially bad at the weekend, but how many times do we get the ball and we run forward with it 10 yards and then we just check?
Yeah, Judge was particularly bad at that.
Wasn't he? And we just check, and you think, Christ, just keep going, just keep running with the ball, just play a forward pass. But I don't know what it is. It's drilled into all of them. They all did. No one's any worse than anyone else. But it just
Bishop had a few forays forward, didn't they? I like the word foray. I always get that in there. Bishop, I think, was the only one who was willing to run and take on a man, and he won a few free kicks out of it. But there's not much here, and we kind of on the WhatsApp.
There's nothing there, was there? Same as the Oxford game. They're so comfortable, weren't they?
Yeah, there's a chance for Chambers.
They let us just have the ball all game long.
McCallum gets the blocks, and there's a few subs. There's a Simpson for Sears, Dobb for Bishop, which just seemed to sap any kind of intent or threat out of the team. Simpson, as you said, Craig, was great last week at Blackpool. Coming on and bombing forward and chasing down his man, but
he came on
totally
in a wider
isolated
role against Blackpool, didn't he?
Well, I think he came on for Keane, didn't he, against Blackpool? I think he was playing up front on his own, but he just seemed lost in this game. And Dobra, as I say, didn't really have a huge amount of chance, but Bishop was playing quite well, and it just felt like, as I said, that sapped the energy out of us, really. Dobra didn't really have a huge amount to offer. Coventry are quite comfortable. Quite a lot of shithousing and time wasting, and keepers moving free kicks from where they were given, and referee falling for it, and linesman being indecisive. But ultimately, Ipswich don't really have a huge amount of clear-cut chances. Again, it's 87th minute. Chance of Evans get out of our club. Full-time whistle blows. The expected boos, but a scattering of applause because I guess it had been better than Tuesday, guys.
Yeah, I don't get the applauding after that. I know the players tried. I stayed out there and I didn't boo, but I stayed out and watched it all. But I certainly wasn't going to be clapping. At the end of the day, an improved performance where you barely have a chance. You lose 1-0 at home for the third home game in a row. You lose your 7th game in 9. It's not worth clapping, is it? It's just
no. We say about it being a nice, easy place to play and comfortable for the players. Well, that's why I'm not saying we should start booing and giving players grief from the word go. But crikey, if you're going to get applauded off, as Joe says, with those stats and having one meaningful shot, well, half chance on target, and just being kept at arm's length for 90 minutes, pretty much, certainly for the second 45, then I don't know what. And there's been stuff going on about booing and. It's not helpful, and Lee O'Neill said it himself, it's not helpful. Well, we were at Sunderland, Rich, and they were drawing 0-0 at half-time with us, and they got booed off the pitch.
Yep.
They come in second half and tore us a new one. They were all over us second half, so...
Yep.
Yeah, Kieran Dyer was saying that on Life's a Pitch beforehand. Like, you think this crowd is bad? Try being at St James's Park or something when the natives are after you there. This is nothing. The players did get dogs abuse after the game on Tuesday, and... it's not really my style to do it, but I think it's deservedly so. They got dogs abuse on Tuesday, where yesterday I can understand staying there, but just stay and sort of solemnly look back at them. You don't need to stay and clap them. And I just think, bloody hell, like
the danger that I put is apathy, and that was the fear around the end of the McCarthy era, that whilst things weren't terrible, that people just didn't really care. Saturday felt like meh, didn't it? And I think probably, is there a sense that people realise that Lambert isn't going to be, if Lambert was going to be sacked before a possible break in a contract, it would have been after Fleetwood probably, wouldn't it? So are people just kind of resigned to the fact that Lambert isn't going anywhere quickly? We've got injuries, which I guess are mitigating circumstances, albeit not a justification for what we've seen over the last 3 months. But what can we, apart from venting a little bit, what really can we do, guys? Really?
Yeah.
You cannot clap, can you?
It just needs to be a strange acceptance. Just as an acceptance that we're going to lose these matches 1-0. We're now in League One. We're 10th, 10th in League One, and we're just accepting the fact that, well, it's just part of the course now. We're losing 1-0 at home for the umpteenth game in a row.
Well, Go on, Joe. Go on. I was going to say, are Coventry the best team you've seen this season? Either they didn't have to be particularly good yesterday, which is an indictment as well, or they're just effective.
I've seen them. I've seen us play them 3 times. I didn't go to the away FA Cup match, but I went to the away league match and then the home replay, and then obviously the other day. And what you can tell, and I said it, I think I was on the pod after the Coventry FA Cup replay match. They just look drilled. Yeah, they just know where each other are going to be at any one point in time on the pitch. Yeah, if the ball's over there, you've got X, Y, Z to pass to. They just look like a very well drilled, coached team.
Yep, and whilst I tried to slate Mark Robbins previously, he did have a clear, distinct style of play with Cov, and he does well drill the teams. He brings in the youth players as well, so maybe I did him a disservice by saying he's a Chris Wilder on delay, perhaps.
Yeah, but Mark Robbins, though, I've watched his teams a number of times against us, and they've always looked decent side when we've played him. It was him, I think it was, but when under Roy Keane, when Barnsley were down here, passing us off the park, and the North Stand fans were olaying, that was when Mark Robbins was in charge of them. I think it was. I'd need to check that.
Well, I'm not sure that's right.
Who does he have backroom staff wise? Coach and assistant manager. Anyone of you know?
I should know that as well, but I don't. I'm just quickly checking his managerial career. Yeah, he was Barnsley, Joe. You're right, before Cov. So maybe you're right. There you go. Yeah.
His sides have always looked decent. They've always played decent football.
Yep. Let's do some questions then. Again, I'm trying to find a light out in the shade, and the questions I'm afraid aren't going to help us. Ian Aitchison, why are there no leaders on the pitch? Do we not have the players with the right sort of character, or has it been drained from them over the previous seasons? Any thoughts, guys, on leaders? We certainly lack them on the pitch, don't we? We've got plenty of talkers off the pitch.
Yeah, it's leaders, but it's winners, isn't it? We've had. Chambers does his thing. I appreciate what he does for the team, certainly off the pitch as well as on it. But his entire Ipswich career has been a captain of a backs to the wall, winning against in the face of adversity team, hasn't it? We've never been under his stewardship a team that's has to go out to win matches. And I sort of get. Lambert does talk about it, doesn't he, sometimes, saying that we haven't got those winners. We're not used to that mentality in the team. And I think it's just a lack. Yes, it is a lack of leaders. It's also just a lack of winners, proper people who want to win football matches and are used to winning football matches.
Yep. Chris London, Tractor Boy, Joe, do you think Caden Jackson's red card has been the final nail in our playoff coffin?
I think if it wasn't that, it would have only been something else, to be honest. I don't think that's actually made any difference. Like, we might have picked up another point or two, but it wouldn't be... We wouldn't have won those games with him and lost them without him.
We're not creating hundreds of chances for the striker, is it? Regardless of who it is.
No,
we don't create anything.
Right.
Well, Stevie Shrimpton then asks, why do our players not move or show for the ball? Why do we constantly pass sideways and backwards? Even throw-ins take 10 minutes as no one wants the ball. Does Lambert tell them to do this? Is this a confidence thing, Craig, or is this players who are just not used to having the ball at feet and know what to do with it?
I think it's a coaching thing myself. I think it's a coaching. I just don't. know what our coaches. When you see other teams come to us, and we include Fleetwood in this as well, they're just better drilled, coached teams than we are. I don't know what our coaches do, other than hold clipboards and shout at fourth officials.
The Sunday League clapping, yeah.
Yeah, they don't seem to add much. I made a note about it this earlier. I was thinking about it, that assistant managers, we've over the years we've had some decent assistant managers, but when we've failed, we've had rubbish assistant managers who haven't stood up to the guy in charge. You can go even back to Burley. We had Houston and Dave Corman.
His Google adventure.
He'd have had a PowerPoint or two, yeah, quite. But yeah, John Gorman and Stuart Houston.
Brian Hamilton.
Yeah, Joe Royal had Willie Donaghy, didn't he? But then, and when we got to Roy Keane, he did well at Sunderland. He had Ricky Sprazier as his second in command, but he didn't come with him. We had wet lettuce Tony Laughlin,
he's at Burnley, isn't he, Laughlin?
Yeah, he's a coach, isn't he, rather than an assistant manager. It's just we need a strong assistant manager or just a strong coaching team. I think that's where. Yeah. I know it's a bit of a rant on a particularly valid question. But
on that, I just have to word this carefully but I was speaking to an ex-player who'd been at the game, or two ex-players who'd been at the game last night, who still have close links to members of the squad and still speak to them a lot. And when I said, what is going wrong? And it's just, we're just a badly coached team, is what they were saying. You see them, they're well coached, they know exactly what they're doing. When they get the ball, they don't have to look up, they take their first touch and know where their runners are. We are a badly coached team. We don't do a lot of coaching in the week. Lambert isn't a training ground manager. He's barely at training. It's Taylor and Gill. And I was just while I was waiting for the pod to start, I was actually reading a thread on Twitter with Steve Lewis, and he was talking to a couple of Norwich fans about it, and it was all the sort of thing about how Culverhouse was a tactical manager. He did all the tactics, and even on that, it's saying that Lambert was not even in the city most of the week, but he was the motivator. He was almost like a Martin O'Neill figure, where he would just come in, sort of watch training on the last day, see who he's going to pick, Brian Clough, that sort of figure. And we are just not well coached, are we? And we haven't gone back to basics at any point.
Have we got any technical coaches, Joe? Anyone who does technical stuff?
Well,
Coventry have, by the way,
good reputation there. But like I said, we haven't ever gone back to the basics of 4-4-2, which was winning games. I'm not saying that is a long-term solution, but we start the season Holy, Vincent Young or Donasian, Chambers, Wolfenden, Miles Kenlock, Danny Rowe or Gwion Edwards, Cole Scouse, Flynn Downs, Luke Garbett, Caden Jackson, James Norwood. We haven't gone back to anything simple at any point this season.
ADV Vash is Mark Robbins' number 2. You might remember him. I think he was a centre back at Reading, I think.
He was very highly rated in the Chelsea academy. He was their under 23s and under 18s manager for a long time. Won a lot of trophies there, and probably is part of why.
There you go. Why Darbo's there.
Came out with him.
Yeah, exactly right.
And they've had other players on loan. Dujon Sterling was there last year, wasn't he? So he's probably got contacts at Chelsea.
That's something perhaps we lack as well. Cornish Mariner, have we now reset expectations? The response to their goal was a lot more muted than previous matches, but is it sense that this is now our level, Joe? Is this the new normal?
I'm amazed at how low, and I'm guilty of it to some extent, but how low the standards are of some of our fans at the moment. That there was a thread on TWTD about this game saying we were much, much better than Tuesday. We were crap yesterday. We barely created a chance. We were beaten by a Coventry team that didn't need to get out of second gear. Yeah, the players gave it a bit more, but I've never really faulted the players' effort. It's not effort that's the issue. All professional players and all teams always try. It's not they might not be at 100% every game, but no one throws a towel in because it's their careers, and things might not be going right, but we're just not very good at all. We've got 4 points from 9 games. We're just being conditioned somehow. I don't know how. We're just being conditioned to accept it, and I don't for 1 second think anyone within the club is clever enough to, come out with the press conference utterings that it happens. But even after the match, Lambert saying, "Well, we did well against a good team." Well, why aren't we the good team? Why can't we be the good team in League One rather than Coventry be the good team in League One? This isn't the Championship anymore. We're not fighting against all odds in the Championship.
Yep. We've had a few questions about players fitting certain roles and doing things that we shouldn't expect. Alan Judge comes into a bit of criticism. Daniel McKenzie kind of asked, whilst it's fairly unclear what the plan is from the manager, what sort of team identity and style should we be adopting with this squad? Joe, you kind of said the 4-4-2, but that didn't feel like it was built around the squad. It was more, he got to the start of the season and Burton didn't really know what to do, and 4-4-2 is kind of like the default setting, isn't it, for most teams? Daniel adds, it's been a mystery what we've been trying to do all season. Does this come down to it? Lambert, as a coach, is found wanting, and we don't really know how to bring the best out of these players.
Yes, 100%.
Simple as
like
that.
I say, I think he was always a 4-3-3 manager, wasn't he? Previously, that's always what he's played for a long time. And when he came in, the first thing he did was try and play 4-3-3 with Jordan Roberts, who came in totally out of the cold because he was the only target man that he could get in the squad, played centrally, and that's what he tried to do. But he soon just drifted away from that. And I think at the start of the season, I think the form of James Norwood and Caden Jackson in pre-season forced his hand to try and play two up front rather than go with what he needed to do. And from that point, we've been chasing our tail ever since, whether it's been going to three at the back because we're struggling for defenders. And at the end of the day, he has not stuck at anything for long enough other than the three at the back, which has become five at the back at times under him. We just, and I know there have been mitigating circumstances with regards to injuries, suspensions, but this squad is good enough. But there's no way, bearing in mind we're playing 3-5-2 now, we started the season with 3 fit centre-backs until the first 2 months of the season. We started the season with 2 fit strikers until, when did Keane get fit? About November. So there's no way he can claim that he went into the season expecting to play 3-5-2, 4-4-2, because it's a lie, because you do not go into a season want to play 2 up front with 2 fit strikers for the first 3 months of it, do you?
Yeah. I'm feeling like, Joe, you're getting the extra 13 minutes out of Tuesday's show that we had to cut out because of Ben's battery issues. So you go for it. You don't hold back. I'll come to you on this one as well. Andrew, at Run Fat Boy Run. Dazelle picks out many a pass that can break open defences. Will he benefit having Jackson back in the team with his pace?
Yeah, he will, because he is the player that can pick out the passes. But we should be setting the team up to play to our players' strengths, one of which is Andre Dazelle, because he is the best passer of the ball at the club.
Mm-hmm. I'm also trying to find other questions where I can find positives. I've got to ask Mullets. Was our start to the season more damaging than encouraging? Coventry have none of the advantages we do, seemingly, yet are miles ahead of us. Is it simply a case of putting the right man in the dugout than the right words in the press every week, Craig?
Yeah, I just don't wonder whether our the start was damaging from Lambert's perspective, because it just gave him the carte blanche to start ballsing things up in the autumn. Trying to be too clever and rotating stuff, because we had got off to a decent start. And I know he said in the press it's not going to be easy, but he's obviously setting himself up for the fact that things may go wrong. But I just think that the way we got off, had we started off a bit not quite as well, he may not have tried to chop and change things and try to be too bloody clever during the autumn.
I think he's talked us out of good form as well. So negative. And I said that yesterday, that Greon Edwards was man of the match, and he came up to the Bobby Robson suite and just has his little interview with Walkie, and I sort of made a note of the quote. He said, "I think we needed a bit of help in January, which we didn't get." It's like, that is just Lambert's words in his mouth, effectively. And why are the players worried about that? I was going to back in themselves.
Yeah, there's a question. I was going to, on your point, Craig. There was something I was thinking over the last few weeks. Is it's kind of this philosophy of if you find yourself in a job and you're blagging it a little bit, but you're moderately, people are kind of think you're doing all right. What you don't do is change whatever you're doing, because you don't want to stand out and stick out and suddenly get found out, do you? And then sacked. So Lambert stumbled across a way of working, worked up till October, and then we talked about the internationals, but started rotating, and has been found out because he's not been able to get it back since, has he? And I think that's something. Yeah, and I don't want to go on a rant about Lambert, but a lot of the questions we've got from people, there's one from Dimitris here, which I want to ask you, Joe. Could Lambert's attitude towards his job transfer to the players? He reminds us that he will be fine, regardless of what happens in his current job. If you hear a manager say this enough times, then do you start to think, actually, this also applies to me?
Yeah, and it sort of goes back to the previous point I was saying about the negativity, and he just, I don't know, he just is an atmosphere drainer, isn't he, in the press conferences, and I can't imagine he can just flick a switch to turn into Mr. Charisma away from that, because he just, I don't know, he just is strange. But it's funny, you hear all the people who played under him at Norwich, when you talk about, they're always on other podcasts talking about it, and he just sounds like a totally different bloke then. And I appreciate that was 10 years ago, but it's just so sharp around the dressing room and finding players, but sort of catch them out. And he just had everyone on their toes, but just hasn't got that here at all. And I'm not saying, I know it's the sort of phrase of he's lost the dressing room, but the players aren't playing for him, are they?
Yeah. I'm trying to find the positives. I really am, but I'm not disagreeing with any.
Rich, there aren't any positives. No. We are the shittest team in League One over 9 games.
Yeah, you tweeted out, Joe. I'm trying to lift things. I've got one question to end on that we'll all be happy about. But Tim Pashley rightly asks, is ITFC a graveyard for managers under Marcus Evans? Apart from Mick, Keane's ended up being a coach, hasn't he, and now a pundit. But Jules' career, he's ended up having kind of honorary jobs and being given director of football ships or what have you, and helping out here and there. But no one else has really gone on and done anything, have they? After us, what's the reason for that?
The structure is set up to fail, isn't it? The job is too big for one manager to handle. He's not getting any assistance from anybody else within the club. It all rests on and McCarthy took it on, and he had the big enough shoulders to do it and to act as that shield to Evans as well. But I just think that as the structure stays as it is, anyone's going to fail.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you get in.
Yeah. But something to be said about
but what is failing though? Because I don't think, I'm not saying someone's going to take us to the Premier League, because we're a million miles away from that. But I think you could have any competent manager who could get this team sort of fighting for promotion in this league. And would that be success? Would that be failure? I'd say getting promoted out of this league would be a success. And I just can't see that many managers would have struggled to get this squad out of this league this year.
Yeah, well, the stats are starting to stack up, aren't they? We're not going to debate about when or if Lambert's going to be going, but it's relegation form, as you say, Joe. I just wanted to end on this one from Crabwalk. Which music-related third kit should we have next season? That two-tone one is absolutely mint from Coventry. Two-tone is a music scene that grew out of Coventry back in the 80s. Before, Dave's a big fan of it. We know it's kind of ska with a bit of punk, with a bit of reggae, but also celebrated the diversity of in the country when there were racial tensions in the 80s, I think. It were, ska bands and two-tone bands were generally bands of all kind of ethnicities, and that grew out of Coventry. So the kit is kind of celebrating 40 years of that kind of movement, as well as the kind of racial diversity that it inspired as well. Really lovely kit. So I bought that just as a thing. It's the only other kit I've got apart from Ipswich kits. I thought it was really, really neat. It looked really good yesterday, although I'm sure they probably could have worn their usual sky blue if they wanted to. But guys, any Ipswich, Suffolk inspired kits that you can think of? Anything? Is it got to be ginger? I think someone said it's got to be ginger for Ed Sheeran, isn't it? An orange eye kit. We love an orange eye kit.
Well, Ed Sheeran is the music, the Suffolk, the one who's synonymous with the county, isn't he, at the moment? I'm sure there's people in previous generations. Brian Eno, he's local, isn't he? And
yeah.
Benjamin Britten. We could have like.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Benjamin Bloom then for a second.
Benjamin Britten scallop. Yeah, he's got a scallop shell, hasn't he, on the beach? We could have like mermaid scallops covering our breasticles.
Some of our players play like they've got a mermaid's tail at times.
You can't nutmeg a mermaid.
That's true. I'm trying to think of anything. I should have had a bit more thinking about this. Tweet us.
Someone mentioned Cradle of Filth, didn't they? So that
was Chris. Daryl mentioned. Who's this guy? I'm trying to remember who this guy is. Nick Herschel. That was it. Wouldn't it be nice or whatever it was? Wouldn't it be good?
It'd be good.
Yeah.
We could rename Portman Road, couldn't we? Naming Cradle of Filth.
Yeah.
Sponsorship opportunity.
The cradle of filth. Welcome the opposition. Thank you everyone for your questions. If you've got any suggestions on music, Suffolk-related music kits, do tweet them in at Blue Monday ITFC. And thank you for it. There's a lot of questions there, kind of delving into issues that I think we've all dealt with. And if I set up Joe for a few more rants, we'll be here all night. And none of us want that, especially Joe. He wants to go to bed, I'm sure. Let's do the roundup very quickly, because I think this becomes less and less relevant as each week goes by. Some interesting results around the top teams. Blackpool, who had been on a pretty crap run and then beat us. Fleetwood could only get a draw there in what I guess is what would you call that area of the country, like North Lancashire Derby or whatever
coast, is it?
Fylde Derby, 0-0 there. MK Dons 0, Doncaster 1, which is why we are now 10th. Peterborough 2, Portsmouth 0. So again, repeated fixtures of teams around the top 6 playing each other. This is the big one though, and this gives Coventry a 5-point lead at the top. Rochdale 3, Rotherham 1. Are Rotherham starting to stutter a little bit? 2 draws and a defeat in their last 3, so everyone's getting a little bit anxious and nervous. Oxford though on a great run of form. Oxford 3-2 winners at Shrewsbury. That's 5 wins and a bounce for Oxford. First time they've done that in a while. I remember something on Twitter. But what about this, guys? How about this setting us up nicely before next weekend? Southend 3, Bristol Rovers 1. And along come Ipswich. Sunderland 2, Gillingham, one of the form teams in the Division 2. And that puts, as we said, Gillingham 1 point behind 10th place Ipswich. But Ipswich obviously having played more games than anyone else in the league. Let's move on to Bristol Rovers, because I want to talk to you. There's a couple of bits and pieces of Bristol Rovers, some stats for you, because we love stats. After Bristol Rovers beat us 2-1 in mid-December, Graham Coughlin, their manager at the time, left to go and take the job in Mansfield, which was nearer to home. And subsequently to that, they beat Plymouth in a cup replay, but have had a shocking run of form ever since. In the 15 league games that have passed since then, 1 win, 5 draws, 9 defeats. Ipswich-esque form, guys. Graham Coughlin's replacement, Ben Garner, has a 26% win ratio. Paul Lambert-esque. He used to work with Tony Pulis at Palace and West Brom, for your information there. But Bristol Rovers now 15th, having been 4th, I think, when they beat us in December. What a perfect time to play someone, Craig, hey? How do you see this one turning out for us? Oh,
it's going to be a clash of 2 in-form teams, isn't it?
Flowing, attacking football, eh?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We can't score, they can't score. I think, obviously we're bottom in the 9-game form table. I think they're actually below us same amount of points in the 6-game form table. So yeah, it's going to be a poor match, or an absolute bloody lunatic match where it's about 4-3 or something. Yeah, exactly.
Joe, are you excited by the prospect of Bristol Rovers Ipswich next week? Possible? No. Is it a hashtag winnable?
Yeah, it's could be one of those games where we just go and turn them over 2 or 3-0, isn't it?
So like Downs and Jackson return,
and Burton, and everyone thinks, oh yeah, actually things aren't that bad, and then they
playoffs. But yeah, Downs and Jackson return from suspension might help us.
Yes, yeah. Well, that will help us because they're 2 of our better players.
Yeah. So, Craig, you're heading down to that one. I'm heading down to that one as well. And some special, like, end of the pod exclusive info. If you're heading down to Bristol Rovers and you want to meet up with us, the Southwest guys are hosting a little pre-match meet-up at the Golden Hill Sports Ground Social Club. It's a £5 to get in, and it's on between 11 and 2 o'clock, I think. They've got that booked. It's about a 15-minute walk to the ground. There's parking nearby. But we're going to do a little mini pod. We're going to kind of do a recap of the week, and we're going to do a bit of a preview. Then we've got a little bit of a game. So if you want to meet up with us and the lovely guys at Southwest Branch, one of the most active supporters branches, all of the Ipswich Town supporters branches, John Banger and the guys down there doing a cracking job, then come and say hello. I think the details you can probably find there if you tweet John or the Southwest guys. There's only limited capacity, so we're not going too big on it. So get there early. But it would be great to meet up with people, Craig.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to it. I haven't been to Bristol Rovers yet. I've been to Bristol City a couple of times. But yeah, looking forward to it. Getting down there early on Saturday.
Yep. Good stuff. That's it, gentlemen. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. An hour and 10 minutes. God, chunky. So we've given that 10-minute back that I was talking about before. Joe, where can we find you on Twitter and any exciting academy happenings this week?
At Joe Fairs, and academy-wise, there's not a huge amount going on this time of the year. The under-18s actually lost in the Suffolk.
They lost to Henley
Cup,
or something.
To Henley Athletic, which is a really sort of low-level team, but they seem a good club of a good setup there. But the issue you have is anyone who's played in the Senior Cup is cup tied for the Junior Cup, and a lot of players were out on loan, so it was sort of a lot of schoolboys in the team as well. So it's really a sort of an under-17s team.
Right, but any information on what's going on in the academy at ITFC_academy? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Craig, where can we find you?
At FIMS75.
Excellent stuff, and as I say, we'll see you in Bristol next week. You can find me at Ipswich. You can find the channel at Blue Monday ITFC, or on Instagram, Blue Monday Pod Team. Always some good photos there from our visits to grounds around the country, including the Bristol Rovers stuff next week. And also YouTube, update your subscriptions. If you go looking for Blue Monday Podcast, you'll find us there, and subscribe for all this kind of joy and content. And at some point we're going to have to talk about 99-2000 because it's the anniversary of that. It kind of feels a little bit incongruous with the state of things on the field. But that is it, gentlemen. Who wants the last word? I don't know what to say apart from hang in there and it might get better, but I don't know.
Lambert out.